Imagine a pitch-black night in the middle of the wilderness where there isn't a single source of artificial light. Today, we've grown accustomed to entrusting our lives to smart surveillance cameras, motion sensors, and loud electronic sirens. But are you ready to learn the startling truth about how, hundreds of years ago, the ordinary silence of the night could become the most deafening and terrifying alarm signal for the inhabitants of the Great Plains? Hollywood movies have taught us to think that a nighttime ambush is bound to involve the loud crackling of branches, the neighing of horses, and battle cries. But forget what you've seen in the movies. In the harsh reality, the real deadly threat did not lie in the noise of the attackers. It was hidden in the barely perceptible changes in the familiar background sounds of the prairies and dense forests. Crickets that suddenly fell silent, or an owl's off-key cry, meant more than the pounding of hooves. For centuries, the indigenous peoples of North America honed a truly unique, one might say superhuman, mastery of stealth and perfect acoustic camouflage. They moved through the forest like true shadows. Their phenomenal ability to read nighttime sounds as if they were an open book saved entire settlements from bloody night raids and total destruction. Be sure to watch this video all the way to the very last second, because today we're going to break down these ancient survival techniques. You'll learn how just 7 barely perceptible sound anomalies unerringly revealed the presence of armed strangers in pitch darkness. And I guarantee that anomaly number 4 will simply shock you. It proves that Native Americans understood animal psychology better than modern scientists. Get comfortable, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and we're off to the nighttime prairies. What if I told you that everything you believed about camp safety at night is a lie? Many mistakenly believe that sentries primarily listen for the crackling of dry branches or careless footsteps. In reality, the most alarming sign for an experienced scout was the sudden cessation of the usual natural sounds. A typical summer night on the Great Plains is always filled with the steady, continuous chirping of insects in the tall grass. This constant background noise served as a kind of indicator of the calm and safety of the surrounding area. Any large creature moving through the thickets inevitably disturbs the peace of the prairie's smaller inhabitants. Experienced warriors knew that the steady hum of insects fell silent within a radius of several meters around a moving person. If the chirping ceased in a wide swath and silence began to slowly approach the camp, it signaled the imminent movement of a group of people. A lone hunter could move carefully enough not to cause a large wave of silence around him. An entire detachment, even creeping with the utmost caution, created a vast zone of absolute acoustic silence. The Crow tribe's scouts spent long hours simply listening to the familiar rhythms of the night step. They learned to distinguish the natural fading of sounds caused by a gust of cool wind from the sudden silence beneath a stranger's footsteps. This skill required tremendous concentration and many years of constant practice in a wide variety of weather conditions. Young guards were deliberately taken far from the camp to train their hearing in absolute darkness. The ability to analyze the silence in the soundscape was valued far more highly in the tribe than incredibly sharp eyesight. The ability to artificially mimic nighttime sounds was also an important part of the tactics of the most experienced scouts. Some warriors were masters at imitating the steady chirping of insects to conceal their own movements. However, deceiving the hearing of a sentry who had grown up on these prairies was an extremely difficult task. A false rhythm or the slightest inaccuracy in pitch instantly alerted an attentive listener. Nature never tolerates falseness, and the indigenous peoples understood this better than anyone else. In the rich culture of the Iroquois in the Northeast, this skill was applied with even greater precision in the dense forests. There, the soundscape consisted not only of insects, but also of the constant rustling of leaves. A sudden pause in this forest chorus served as an equally clear indicator of an intruder. Lookouts near the longhouses were always positioned to closely monitor the intersection of sound zones. Any acoustic anomaly was immediately analyzed and silently relayed along the chain of guards. This sophisticated detection method required no special equipment or advanced infrastructure. The primary tool was the human being himself, his heightened senses, and his deep connection to the environment. Such organic integration with nature made the warriors unrivaled masters of night operations. They did not struggle against the thick darkness, but used it as a vast canvas for reading information. The absence of sound became just as important a tactical detail as its obvious presence. It is important to understand that each tribe had its own unique methods for interpreting these acoustic pauses. An outsider could sit in the midst of this silence and be completely unaware of an approaching threat. For a prairie dweller, it was equivalent to a loud thud on a huge drum right next to their ear. This invaluable knowledge was passed down from generation to generation, forming a reliable security system. Night raids rarely went completely unnoticed, precisely because of such incredibly subtle observations. Today, it is hard to imagine how keen one's hearing must be to notice the disappearance of chirping in the darkness. This unique ability demonstrates the highest level of human adaptation to the harsh conditions of the wild. This kind of blending into the surrounding world allowed them to avoid many serious dangers in time. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on these unusual ancient methods of detecting threats. Be sure to write about it in the comments and subscribe to the channel to learn even more secrets of the past. I will reveal the best-kept secret regarding the sound communication of ancient scouts on the steppe. Using the sounds of the wild to transmit commands between stealthy warriors was a completely standard practice. Imitating a wolf's howl or a coyote's cry allowed them to safely transmit signals over vast distances. To the untrained ear, these signals blended perfectly with the usual nighttime sounds of the Great Plains. But experienced camp guards could detect the slightest false notes in this complex natural symphony. The attacker's main mistake often lay not in the quality of the sound itself, but in the geography of its source. Wolves and coyotes have their own established habits, travel routes, and favorite hunting spots. They very rarely howl from thick thickets near water or while in an unnatural low-lying area. A true wild predator prefers high ground so that the sound carries as far as possible across its territory. Hearing a wolf's howl from thick reed beds was a clear and undeniable sign of human presence. Furthermore, a pack of predators always has a specific call pattern that is very difficult to imitate. Lakota warriors would listen to real wolves for hours to understand their rhythm and the finest nuances of their intonation in detail. Human lungs have a completely different capacity, which inevitably affects the duration of the sound produced. A solitary, overly short, or unnaturally abrupt howl instantly aroused serious suspicion among the sentries. If the sound came from 3 different directions at perfect intervals, it signaled a coordinated enemy maneuver. The sentries always knew the exact location of all the natural wolf trails around their camp. Any predator signal coming from an area where these animals hadn't been seen in weeks was analyzed. The guards immediately began assessing the wind direction and other important environmental factors. A real beast would never make a sound while moving from downwind directly toward a large settlement. A human, however, attempting to coordinate an attack might simply overlook this crucial behavioral detail of the predator. In the harsh northern conditions of the subarctic, the Cree and Athabascan peoples constantly face similar challenges. In snow-covered forests, any sound travels quite differently, taking on a distinct resonance and carrying much farther. Imitating a predator's call there required even greater skill due to the complex acoustic properties of the frosty air. A mistaken pitch or an ill-chosen location for the call could cost the party the element of surprise. The winter taiga forest never forgave carelessness, instantly revealing the artificial origin of any sound. Training in the correct recognition and precise imitation of sounds always began at the earliest age. Young men would go out into the distant steppe and try to call coyotes until the wild animals began to answer them. Only upon achieving absolute acoustic perfection did a young warrior earn the right to participate in night raids. It was akin to learning an incredibly complex foreign language, where correct pronunciation guaranteed survival. The slightest, most imperceptible accent in a wolf's howl would betray a careless man's affiliation with a foreign tribe. Using the voices of the wild required deep respect and understanding of the habits of the prairie's inhabitants. A warrior had to think entirely like the beast whose voice he was trying to mimic in the darkness of night. It was not enough simply to make a sound. One had to intuitively choose the right moment and the right location. Anyone who did not feel the deep rhythms of the prairie very quickly fell victim to their own carelessness. Sound camouflage was a true art, accessible only to the finest masters of stealth. Ultimately, it was this fine line between natural noise and human cunning that decided the outcome of confrontations. The ability to analyze such details boggles the imagination of even the most modern survival experts. But what if an invisible enemy is betrayed not by the sound of a voice, but by the very breath of the wind in the tall grass? Watch the video to the end to uncover the secret of the moving prairie in the next chapter. How difficult do you think it was to distinguish the real call of a herd from a coordinated signal from scouts? Something you've never seen in modern films was the basis of ancient steppe signaling. The Great Plains are thickly covered with tall grasses that constantly sway under the influence of strong steppe winds. This endless green ocean has its own strict laws of motion, creating a steady, monotonous rustling. When the wind blows steadily in one direction, all the stalks bend in unison and produce a harmonious sound. The slightest disruption to this stunning natural choreography served as an instant alarm signal for the sentry. A person cautiously making their way through the dense steppe thickets inevitably pushes the dense stalks aside with their body. Even if they move incredibly slowly, the grass springs back into place with a characteristic dry snap. This unnatural sound is radically different from the soft rustling created by ordinary air currents. An experienced guard always analyzed the wind direction in detail before taking up his position on high ground. If the wind blew from the north and the grass began to rustle differently, it signaled the presence of a physical object. There were special, complex movement techniques designed to minimize this dangerous effect. The warriors diligently practiced smoothly parting the grass with the shaft of a spear and then carefully returning it to its place. They tried to move strictly parallel to the gusts of wind, using moments when it picked up to make quick dashes. When the wind suddenly died down, the entire stealthy detachment froze, completely blending into the motionless prairie. This perfect synchronization with natural rhythms required phenomenal self-control and physical strength. However, it was practically impossible to completely deceive the hearing of a sentry who had grown up in these steppes. They knew every nuance of the sounds made by the local flora under the most varied weather conditions. Tall bison grass sounded completely different from the low, stiff shrubs on the hillsides. The invisible detachment's transition from one vegetation zone to another was always accompanied by a change in the nature of the rustling. A sentry could determine with his eyes closed exactly which thickets the stranger was currently making his way through. Sometimes resourceful scouts would deliberately plant strips of particularly stiff, crunchy grass around the camp. These areas served as a kind of sound barrier that was physically impossible to cross silently. The dry, sturdy stems snapped with a loud crack, alerting the entire camp to an attempted intrusion. Such tactical tricks demonstrate a strikingly deep understanding of the laws of physics and acoustics. Nature did not merely surround the camp, it literally became an extension of its defensive system. In the northeast, in the wooded territories of the Iroquois, dry ferns and undergrowth served as a reliable alarm system. Moving through dense, stiff brush against the wind created an even more noticeable acoustic dissonance. Guards near large settlements always listened intently to the rhythm of swaying forest branches. A sudden crack of wood in a moment of complete stillness was absolute proof of the presence of enemy scouts. The ancient forest spoke to them in the language of sounds. One only needed to know how to decipher it correctly. The uniqueness of this method lies in the complete absence of any artificial signaling devices. The camp's defense relied exclusively on a perfect understanding of basic natural processes and the laws of aerodynamics. Anyone who stubbornly tried to defy these laws inevitably gave away their presence with a loud noise. Harmony with the environment was not an abstract philosophy, but a daily matter of the tribe's survival. The night concealed silhouettes, but made every unnatural sound incredibly pronounced and distinct. Today, the ancient art of reading the sounds of the prairie is considered a human skill that has been almost completely lost. We no longer listen to the whisper of the grass, entrusting our safety to complex modern technologies. But the experience of indigenous peoples proves that our senses are capable of truly remarkable feats. This knowledge forces us to take a completely new look at the history of human interaction with the wild. If you were impressed by this ingenious natural alarm system, be sure to like this video. A secret passed down from generation to generation lies in the incredible sensitivity of domesticated animals. In the culture of plains tribes, such as the Comanche and Crow, horse herds were of immense value. Horses were not only a means of transportation, but also the primary measure of a settlement's status. Therefore, capturing the finest steeds often became the primary objective of stealthy nighttime raids by neighboring tribes. It was the animals that first sensed the approach of danger, thanks to their incredibly keen sense of smell and hearing. A single horse might snort or shift from one foot to the other for a variety of natural reasons. It might be shooing away pesky nighttime insects, reacting to a small predator, or simply changing position in its sleep. The guards never paid attention to rare, isolated sounds coming from the pasture. However, a sudden, intense agitation of the entire herd was a sure sign of a major threat. Horses possess a powerful herd instinct that causes them to react in unison to a source of fear. Experienced steppe horse thieves were well aware of this trait and employed the most complex maneuvers to get around it. They always tried to approach from downwind so that their scent would be carried away from the sensitive animals. The warriors moved incredibly slowly, making soft, soothing sounds familiar to the horses from birth. Sometimes they would tightly tie pieces of bison hide to their moccasins to mask the sound of their footsteps. The main goal was to calm the herd, preventing it from sending an alarm signal to the camp. Nevertheless, the slightest accidental misstep in the squad's coordination led to instant failure. If a single careless warrior stepped on a dry branch, the nearest horse would jerk back sharply and fearfully. This sudden movement, like a chain reaction, spread throughout the entire large herd within a few moments. A sudden chorus of snorts and the loud clatter of hooves echoed across the prairie, warning the guards of a breach in the perimeter. The line between an incredibly successful infiltration and a resounding failure of the raid was thinner than a hair. The Comanche sentinels had specially trained certain horses to serve as early acoustic alarms. These exceptionally sensitive animals were tethered with long ropes at the farthest approaches to the settlement. They possessed incredible hearing and were always the first to react to any suspicious noises in the darkness. Their sharp warning cries served as the most reliable alarm for the warriors sleeping in the teepee. Such horses were worth their weight in gold and were guarded with particular care by the entire tribe. The sound of an alarmed herd most often marked the beginning of a chaotic and dynamic nighttime confrontation. Realizing they had been definitively discovered, the attackers would move to active measures, attempting to steal part of the herd. The camp's defenders, in turn, rushed headlong to intercept them, guided by the sound of hooves in the darkness. The warriors' reaction speed in this situation was crucial to preserving the tribe's greatest treasure. The ability to correctly interpret the language of animals reliably saved vast settlements from complete ruin. The deep symbiotic bond between man and horse was fully evident here. In conditions of zero visibility, they unconditionally trusted each other's instincts more than their own eyes. The animals reliably served as an extension of their master's senses, forming a unified defensive system. This phenomenal level of mutual understanding was forged over many years of living together on the harsh plains. Night completely erased the boundaries between species, leaving only a common goal: to survive safely until dawn. The animals' hearing was an unrivaled tool for protecting the camp from sudden nighttime intrusions. This deep connection proves that survival on the prairie depended on a keen ability to understand nature. In the next chapter, you'll learn why the sound of a stone falling innocently could rouse hundreds of warriors. Watch the video to the end to understand the logic behind this incredible acoustic paradox of the mountains. Have you ever wondered how much the safety of ancient settlements depended on the herd's instincts? When setting up a large camp near rocky hills or deep canyons, the sound of falling rocks was a common occurrence. Extreme temperature fluctuations, the nighttime chill following a hot day, caused the rock to contract and crack. Fine gravel and small boulders regularly rolled down steep slopes, creating a characteristic rustling sound. The wind also constantly contributed, blowing dry grains of sand and small fragments from high ledges. The camp's inhabitants quickly grew accustomed to this natural symphony of stone and stopped paying attention to it. However, there was a huge difference between natural rockfall and a stone dislodged by a human foot. When rock slowly cracks from the night cold, the sound of the fall usually begins with a quiet, growing rustle. The rock glides smoothly down the slope, dragging smaller fragments along with it and creating a micro-avalanche effect. This process follows its own strict natural physics, with a smooth start and a gradual acoustic dampening of the sound. The guards, constantly exposed to such harsh conditions, absorb this rhythm at a deep subconscious level. A person who steps heavily on an unsecured boulder in the dark produces a completely different acoustic effect. Under the sudden weight of the body, the stone quickly breaks loose, emitting a loud, frightening single thud. It is extremely rare for this to be followed by the characteristic trail of cascading sand, since the initial impulse was artificial. This dull, unexpected impact against other stones clashed sharply with the familiar background noise of the nighttime gorge. It sounded like a loud drum beat in complete silence, immediately attracting the attention of experienced sentries. Stealthy movements across scree slopes and boulder fields, clusters of stone blocks on the slopes, were particularly dangerous. Moving silently across such unstable terrain at night was a task of colossal difficulty even for an experienced warrior. The stones often balanced on a fragile edge, ready to topple at the slightest pressure from a moccasin. The sound of heavy boulders rubbing against each other instantly gave away the exact location of the sneaking detachment. The attackers also persistently tried to use the rocks to divert attention, artificially creating noise off to the side. They might throw a heavy object into the opposite part of the gorge to force the sentries to turn away. However, the experienced guards knew this trick well and rarely fell for such cheap auditory provocations. The trajectory of a thrown object differs significantly from that of a natural fall, which affects the nature of the sound upon impact. Objects in nature always fall downward, according to the strict laws of gravity, whereas an object thrown by a person possesses horizontal momentum. The camp's defenders often set up clever acoustic traps on the most dangerous and narrow rocky paths. They deliberately placed unstable flat stones in areas where enemy scouts were expected to pass. It was physically impossible to step on such a prepared slab without dislodging it due to the shifted center of gravity. It was a stunningly simple yet incredibly effective alarm system, requiring neither mechanisms nor ropes. The surrounding landscape itself became a reliable first line of defense for the peacefully sleeping settlement. The ability to read the stone symphony of the high mountains required absolute concentration and complete detachment. The sentries sat motionless for hours on end, blending into the rocks and analyzing every rustle far below. They understood clearly that their hearing was the only shield between the sleeping people and the hostile darkness. Anyone who could distinguish the faint whisper of the wind from the sound of a person's footsteps on the rocks was held in boundless esteem. It was a true art honed by millennia of life in the harsh conditions of the rocky foothills. The sound of a falling stone was just one of many crucial pieces in the complex puzzle of nighttime security. It harmoniously complemented observations of animal behavior and changes in the song of steppe insects. Together, they formed a completely impenetrable information network that protected the camp more reliably than any high walls. This vividly demonstrates the indigenous people's profound integration into the harsh natural environment of their habitat. The rock was not merely dead matter, it was a full-fledged and vital participant in the eternal struggle for survival. What the government doesn't want you to know lies in the incredible capabilities of the human sense of smell. In an era when sophisticated night vision optics were completely absent, the sense of smell played no less a role than good hearing. Smoke from hearths was a constant and familiar companion in the life of any Native American settlement on the Great Plains. The scent of burning dry wood, smoldering embers, and food being prepared permeated clothing and leather teepees. However, it was the subtlest changes in the chemical composition of this air that could foreshadow an imminent hidden threat. Each tribe and each settlement used strictly defined, readily available types of wood or fuel for their hearths. In treeless expanses, dried dung was often used, providing a distinctive but very steady heat. In the forested river valleys, people traditionally burned local cottonwood, flexible willow, or dry oak branches. This constant, familiar scent became a kind of invisible dome, reliably covering the entire camp. Any intrusion of foreign forest smoke was instantly detected by the incredibly keen sense of smell of the experienced night watchman. An attacking party located several miles away inevitably needed warmth or hot food. Cautious scouts lit microscopic fires in deep pits to reliably conceal the light of the bright flames. They tried to use the driest branches possible to avoid thick, highly revealing white smoke. The attackers stubbornly tried to combat this by eating only cold pemmican and dried meat while on the move. They completely avoided lighting open fires for many days so as not to give away their presence. However, it was physically impossible to completely rid their own clothing of the lingering soot. The damp night air greatly intensified these scents, making the smell of smoke-cured bodies easily detectable at close range. As the stealthy detachment approached the outermost teepees, their heavy scent spoke louder than any words. The scouts skillfully used the smoke from their own fires as a precise tool for gauging the wind's direction. They watched closely where the thin wisp from their hearth drifted to understand where to expect odors. If the smoke suddenly changed direction, it signaled a shift in the wind and the urgent need to change position. The steppe wind was both the main ally and the main betrayer in this ceaseless war of scents. The ability to masterfully read invisible air currents was akin to the ability to read tracks on dusty ground. Today we have almost completely lost this incredible ability to perform a subtle olfactory analysis of our surroundings. City dwellers are tightly surrounded by thousands of artificial scents that permanently dull our primal instincts. For the ancient peoples of the plains, a scent was as clear and understandable a text as a printed book is to us. A stranger's smoke was not merely a nuisance. It was a harbinger of serious, tactical shifts in the balance of power. Understanding this hidden facet of history allows us to appreciate the skill of the ancient night watchman on a much deeper level. In the next chapter, you'll learn why a night bird that suddenly left its perch was considered the most accurate radar. Watch the video to the end to immerse yourself in the fascinating secrets of the feathered guardians of the night prairie. Do you think modern militaries could effectively operate without radar, relying solely on their sense of smell? How effective and reliable does this ancient method of early detection of a stealthy enemy seem to you? The cool night prairie and the wooded valleys surrounding it have always been home to a vast multitude of birds. Owls, nightjars, and other nocturnal winged predators went about their usual lives, making sounds familiar to all. Diurnal birds, on the other hand, slept very soundly in the dense canopies of old trees or tall grass. Their sleep was incredibly alert, attuned to the early detection of natural predators, tree snakes, or small cats. Their rest patterns were governed by strict natural rhythms, which were rarely disrupted without a truly compelling reason. The sudden loud flapping of a large bird's wings, taking flight in panic in complete darkness, was always considered an anomaly. Diurnal birds instinctively fear flying at night due to the enormous risk of colliding with hard branches and crashing. It took a powerful stressor to force a peacefully sleeping flock to take flight from their roosts in the darkness. The approach of a wild lynx or coyote usually caused only a slight, anxious rustling in the uppermost tiers, but the massive movement of a group of people through the dry undergrowth drove the birds into the night sky out of uncontrollable fear. In the harsh subarctic regions, among the Kiri people, the behavior of large snowy owls also served as an important indicator. Although the snowy owl is an exclusively nocturnal hunter, it has its own established routes in areas of constant patrol. If an attentive hunter noticed that several owls had suddenly left their usual territory, it aroused suspicion. A large predator yields its territory only when a large group of people is moving below on a large scale. Observing the movement of these nocturnal aerial predators helped to detect hidden ambushes in the snow-covered forests in time. Wise nature makes no completely meaningless movements during the dark hours of the day, conserving its precious energy. This indisputable axiom formed the basis of the entire complex survival system of the indigenous peoples of North America. Every flap of a bird's wing, every quiet rustle of a falling feather, was subject to strict, instantaneous observation and analysis. What a modern city dweller would consider mere random noise was, for a warrior, a clear intelligence report. Knowledge of the deep habits of every species of bird was a required subject in the school for young Native American trackers. It is crucial to understand that all these natural sound markers functioned exclusively within a tightly integrated system. A single bird's cry might be a mere coincidence, but a bird taking flight against the backdrop of silent cicadas signaled a definite alarm. The sentry's brain functioned as an incredibly complex analytical center, simultaneously comparing dozens of factors every second. The ability to quickly isolate the desired signal from the general acoustic background required many years of meditative practice. It was an incredible level of interaction with the environment, completely beyond the reach of regular army soldiers of that time. Today's high-tech surveillance systems use powerful thermal imagers and laser motion sensors. The ancient sentinels skillfully utilized the very fabric of living nature, weaving it into their own reliable defensive network. Their ancient methods required no batteries or complex maintenance. They required only a deep respect for the world. The ability to listen intently and understand the complex language of wings was the absolute key to the safety of entire generations. This knowledge will forever remain a vivid testament to the supreme intelligence and incredible observational skills of the inhabitants of the Great Plains. The proper organization of the Night Watch was the most complex element of the social and military structure of any Native American tribe. It was by no means simply standing guard, as was practiced in the European regular armies of that time. Only the most experienced warriors who had undergone many years of special, rigorous training in the wilderness became night watchmen. The lives of hundreds of sleeping tribesmen depended on their incredible endurance, vigilance, and ability to keep a clear head. The cost of even the slightest accidental mistake was too high to carelessly entrust this responsible work to inexperienced youths. Positions for night watch were chosen with incredible care even before the hot steppe sunset. The sentries always took up positions on high ground so that their silhouettes would blend completely with the trees against the sky. They positioned themselves precisely so that the wind blew in their faces, carrying scents and sounds from potentially dangerous directions. Each hidden position had pre-planned, safe routes for an absolutely silent retreat to the main camp. If a lone sentry was discovered, he was to sound a signal and vanish into the darkness like a ghost. The secret system of communication between the sentries constituted a vast, separate layer of secret tribal knowledge. It utilized fluid gestures, discernible even in the faintest starlight, and acoustic signals of incredible complexity. Sometimes thin leather straps were cleverly used, stretched unnoticed between neighboring posts through the tall grass. A careful, calculated tension in the strap allowed the alarm signal to be transmitted completely silently over a distance of several dozen meters. This completely ruled out the possibility of the message being intercepted by outsiders in the immediate, threatening vicinity. The night watch was changed exclusively according to internal biological clocks, without the use of any devices. The warriors oriented themselves flawlessly by the slow movement of the stars, the position of the moon, and the change in air temperature before dawn. The handover of the dangerous post took place in complete silence, using prearranged light touches. The incoming warrior received all the accumulated information about auditory and olfactory changes from the tense hours that had passed. This continuous, silent transfer of data ensured the integrity of the defensive perimeter throughout the long night. In the event of a precise detection of the enemy, the guard never rushed into a reckless, heroic solo attack. His most important task was to warn the camp in time, giving the other warriors precious time to arm themselves. He might let out a very sharp owl-like cry or mimic a coyote's howl in a strictly agreed-upon tribal tone. After that, the sentry would begin to secretly and silently follow the enemy unit, noting their exact numbers. Critical tactical intelligence was valued far more highly than the heroism of a single individual in a senseless hand-to-hand struggle. Overall survival on the Great Plains was always reliably built on this foundation of invisible but constant surveillance. The ancient night surveillance techniques of indigenous peoples are still studied in detail by military experts around the world. They indisputably prove that the human body possesses hidden internal reserves of absolutely incredible power. One need only know how to correctly and patiently attune one's mind and body to the same frequency as the surrounding living nature. This unique legacy serves as an eternal reminder of the power of the human spirit and its inseparable connection to the surrounding world. The right choice of a campsite was never random and strictly followed strict rules of tactical safety. The obvious convenience of access to water and firewood was always balanced by the urgent need for reliable protection against attack. Elders and the most experienced warriors studied the terrain with incredible care before giving the order to set up the teepee. An ideal steppe campsite had to have strong natural barriers on at least two vulnerable sides. These could be the steep banks of a deep river, sheer cliffs, or dense, completely impassable thickets of thorny shrubs. In the endless open spaces of the Great Plains, tribes often arranged their teepees in a huge circle. This tight formation created a closed, safe inner courtyard where the tribe's most valuable horses were herded for the night. The entrance to each leather dwelling was usually strictly oriented toward the east, directly toward the rising morning sun. This had not only important sacred significance, but also helped the inhabitants synchronize their waking with the first rays of light. The circular layout had no dangerous blind spots, allowing sentries to easily monitor all external approaches to the settlement. The internal arrangement of dwellings within the circle also followed a strict social hierarchy and served an important tactical purpose. The tents of renowned, experienced warriors were often positioned in the most dangerous directions, closer to the outer defensive perimeter. In the event of a sudden, massive attack, they were the first to bravely engage in battle, giving the rest of the inhabitants time to prepare. The tents of the wise elders and families with women were located closer to the very center, in the zone of maximum safety. This well-thought-out spatial organization vividly reflected the tribe's internal structure, focused on survival. The vast territory surrounding the camp was specifically and meticulously prepared to make a stealthy approach difficult. Dry, brittle branches were cleared from the main trails so that their own people could move silently, while enemies would stumble in the tall grass. In key directions of a likely attack, they might have deliberately scattered fine, rustling gravel or dry, brittle bark. Thus, the thoughtful layout of indigenous settlements represented an unparalleled example of adaptive architecture. It always took into account the harsh climate, complex terrain, available building materials, and the possible tactics of a potential enemy. This was by no means a primitive form of settlement. It was the result of an incredibly deep analysis of the environment. Every element of the camp, from the orientation of the entrance to the location of the fire pit, served a single purpose: ensuring safety. Engineering and architectural thought here always operated in complete, absolute harmony with the harsh laws of nature. Understanding these fundamental principles allows us to clearly see the incredibly sophisticated organization of life in ancient American societies. Their ability to create absolutely safe spaces under extreme conditions deserves the most sincere admiration. They never attempted to brutally subdue nature by erecting stone walls. Instead, they integrated themselves into it with incredible organic harmony. The vast world around them was their best protector, warning them in time of any approaching deadly storm. This unique philosophy of coexistence with the landscape will forever remain their most important cultural legacy. The success of nighttime defense depended largely on a perfect understanding of the tactics of those who stubbornly tried to infiltrate the camp. The attackers, as a rule, came from the same environment and possessed exactly the same survival skills. It was an incredibly tense contest between equals, where the victor was the one whose concentration proved greater at the decisive moment. The art of camouflage and stealthy nighttime movement was honed by the warriors to an absolute, incredible level of physical perfection. They diligently trained to blend into the landscape so that even the most alert sentry's eye would glide right past, without pausing for a moment. The most important rule of any night raid was the maximum, unnatural slowing of all the body's physical processes. A single step could take a full minute. First, the toe of a leather moccasin would feel the ground incredibly gently, searching for dry branches. Then the body's weight was smoothly and deliberately shifted forward, completely avoiding any sudden shifts in the center of gravity of the stealthy warrior. Breathing was strictly controlled so as not to create unnecessary noise upon exhalation and not to disrupt the steady rhythm of the heart. The warrior literally transformed into a sort of slow, dark shadow, gliding silently through the thick thickets of the night prairie. One of the most incredibly difficult tasks was crossing wide-open areas, brightly lit by the moonlight. In such critical situations, the frozen stone tactic was employed, in which the agile warrior curled up into a tight ball on the ground. He remained absolutely motionless until a drifting cloud covered the moon, providing a few seconds of saving darkness for a dash. Experienced sentries could look directly at such a scout, and mistake him entirely for an ordinary dark prairie boulder. Psychological, strict control over one's own strained muscles at that moment had to be absolute. The internal dynamics of the raid always assumed a very clear retreat plan in case of sudden detection. If one of the natural sound markers gave away their presence, the group would instantly and in unison scatter in different directions. Spreading out in a wide fan shape, they completely deprived the camp's defenders of the ability to pursue a single, large target. This severely disoriented the pursuers, forcing them to split into small, vulnerable groups and completely lose their advantage. A secret rendezvous point was designated many miles from the camp in a safe section of the prairie that had been thoroughly scouted in advance. Sometimes cunning scouts skillfully used the hides of large animals as living shields for perfect camouflage. They would drape a bison or large wolf hide tightly over themselves, perfectly mimicking the movements of a grazing or wandering beast. From a distance, such a strange silhouette seemed completely natural, which greatly lulled the vigilance of less experienced sentries. However, this method carried a truly enormous risk of causing uncontrollable panic among the camp's herd of sensitive horses. Therefore, such complex camouflage was used only under specific conditions and at a certain, safe distance. Successful infiltration directly behind the inner perimeter of the camp was always considered the pinnacle of military skill. This required flawlessly navigating the sound barrier of rustling grass, camp dogs, and incredibly sensitive horses. A warrior who managed to cut the halter and lead a horse away from the center of the camp in absolute silence covered himself in eternal glory. Such incredible feats became legends, carefully passed down by word of mouth around campfires for generations. They vividly demonstrated the triumph of human cunning over the prairie's most perfect natural alarm system. The fascinating stories of the Great Plains nocturnal stealth raids remain among the most gripping chapters of the past. They are entirely devoid of the roar of modern artillery, yet brimming with incredible tension and hidden tactical dynamics. Each of these silent duels in the darkness was a brutal test of the resilience of the entire tribal way of life of the Native Americans. Their ingenious methods of camouflage still command sincere respect from military survival and planning experts. This incredible mastery has left a deep mark on the history of tactical military art on the North American continent. We have delved deeply into the amazing world of ancient night tactics and the incredible natural vigilance of the indigenous peoples of North America. Every rule of survival was forged by harsh experience and a deep understanding of the immutable laws of the surrounding world. What other hidden aspects of daily life, survival, or the military art of Native American tribes would you like to explore on our channel? Suggest interesting topics for future videos in the comments that you'd like to see in our upcoming episodes. And be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss new exciting historical investigations.